there's a number of issues that happened, maybe mid to late 80s. Early mid 80s, Scottish football was really good. I mean, Aberdeen were great, Dundee United were great, Hearts were good, Celtic were good, Rangers were rubbish. So it was great. It was ideal. And things changed obviously when Graham Souness came in 1986, and they hadn't won the league for 9 years. So they decided we're going to do something about this. And you thought, well, if they'll watch this, they could be left in their slipstream here. Souness takes over, they're buying Terry Butcher, they're buying Chris Woods, etc. By that time, they've actually got the best stadium in the UK, maybe even Europe, because after the Ibrox disaster in 1971, I think they'd vowed to do something about the stadium, and I think it took them the best part of 10 years, cost a lot of money, but they had a fantastic stadium, unbelievably, compared to every other stadium. It was like, a different planet altogether. And people go and watch junior football just now. Those are the conditions that you had before 1989, basically. I mean, Celtic Park, I know this will seem bizarre to the kids out there, but in modern parlance, you could go to the Lisbon Lions seat, if you'd a seat, in the first half, and then just walk round to the Jock Stein stand. That's what you could do, because there was no seats. There was only the South Stand, or the stand as it was called then, that held 6,000 people. The rest is just this big open space where people stand. And that's one of the reasons, other reasons, that there's more females coming to games these days, which is great. More kids are coming, which is great, because the conditions were archaic, absolutely archaic. So they've got this brilliant stadium. They brought in Souness. They're starting to spend big money. And in that season, the 86-87 season, at one point Celtic were 9 points clear in the league, and should have went on to win the league. Davy Hay goes to the board, asked to buy a couple of players, and the famous line the board came out with, well, if you want those players, you have to use your own money. So that's a bit of a warning sign. Also at that time, the fanzines were starting to, not The View, sorry, this was starting to come in and starting to flag up some things that you maybe weren't aware of, things going behind the scenes. Because up to that point, I think most fans were not interested in who was running the club. But fans at the moment, I think, are not interested in running the club, because it's what's on the park that counts. And in the early 80s, we had a really, really good team. That's my favourite. One of my favourite Celtic teams, let's just call it that. Frank McGarvey and George McCluskey and Charlie Knight, Murdo, Roy Aitken, all these guys, great team. That's the era that actually went home and away to watch Celtic. And good era, good teams. Core of those players were still there. Should have won the league, didn't win the league. And then we hear these phrases like, use your own money. You're thinking, well, hold on, we let them win the league. You've let them win the league. If you give David Hay money, he wins the league. You don't do it. Hold on, that's not right. Why is that? And the thing is about most things, what is the tipping point? What is the bit that says, we've had enough of this, or something has to change? So what happens the following season is Billy McNeil comes back, it's the centenary season, and we win the double. So for 95% of the fans, everything's okay. Everything is sweetness and light. Why were you guys worried? That's a blip. That season's a blip. You go in from that, we don't spend very much money at all. Over in Ibrox, they're spending fortunes, and they win the league again. And that's the first of their 9. Not that we knew it at that point in time. From a personal point of view, when we won the Centenary League against Dundee, infamous game, where, depending on what your source is, the ground's meant to hold about 65,000. There could have been 85,000 in there that day. We always went to the stand. There was very, very few all-ticket games. Again, you young kids, very few all-ticket games. You could decide if you lived, like I lived, a few miles from Celtic Park, and it got to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you thought, I'll just go to the game. No planning, no trying to buy tickets, no nothing. I'll just pop up to the game. And then as often as not, you could go into the stand, the on-stand there, and get a really good seat. Because at that time, crowds of maybe 20, 30, 40,000 max, in a ground that holds about 65,000. So there was no issue about going to games. That game, we thought we could win the league today, maybe go a bit earlier. So we go maybe about 2 o'clock, and we're in the back row of the stand, and the place is jumping, and there's people in the aisles, and it's bedlam, absolute bedlam. And you look at the ground, you're thinking, this is a kind of accident waiting to happen here. Win the league, great, Centenary, and then we thought, let's buy a season ticket. Right, because if we get a season ticket, we get a guarantee, that's my seat. You can't sit there, that's my seat. And we get a brilliant seat. We had about 10 seats from the board, from the director's box and the media and stuff like that. They were just there, we were there. You're right in the middle, that's your seat. And they didn't like season ticket holders. They were against season. And there's various stories that you've heard over time that back in the 70s, if you wanted a season ticket, you go to the chairman's office and he would almost like interview you before you get a season ticket. Right. So you should do that now. So they didn't like season because they were a hassle. And I think they felt season ticket holders were entitled in some way, shape or form. And I suppose that's how you did think. You think, I think it was about £160 at the time, which is there's not a lot of money then. But you think, well, I've put my money down here, so if there's tickets for cup final, say, you should give one to me because I put my money up front here. And that was going to spark it at some point later, that kind of conversation. But I've kind of jumped forward there. So, centenary season, we don't invest the money, we lose the league, but we win the cup final, the Joe Miller Cup final. And then we stop them doing the treble, and everything's sweetness and light again. And we've signed Maurice Johnson. And Maurice is at the cup final. And the rumour at the time was Charlie Nicholas is coming back. So Charlie Nicholas and Maurice Johnson up front. The league is a foregone conclusion next year. They'll score 50, 60 goals between them. No problem. And then all of a sudden the Maurice Johnson thing doesn't happen. And then bizarrely it ends up on the other side of the city. So now you've got a situation whereby, and by this time David Murray's now involved. And I think there used to be a kind of unwritten rule amongst the kind of old firms is that the board don't say anything that's going to cause too much issues on the other side of the city. But David Murray wasn't like that. He was very bullish. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. And what they basically did is you think you're saying Maurice Johnson, we'll have him. Doesn't matter, what religion he is. I know that was another big discussion. Doesn't matter religion, doesn't matter, we'll take him. And you're thinking, what? How could this possibly happen? So they've taken, and at that time, Maurice Johnson was one of the best six strikers in Europe at that point in time. Not only have we not got him, they've got him. And I think that's one of the big things. If we'd have signed him, I don't think we'd have won the league that year. And then it doesn't get to 2 in a row. It stops at 1 in a row. So that was a huge thing. And then fast forward a year, the cup final, the 1990 cup final, the Aberdeen cup final, the Anton Logan missing the penalty cup final. A few days before that, Michael Kelly and a guy called Brian Dempsey joined the board. People had heard of Michael Kelly in Glasgow. He was the Lord Provost during the Glasgow's Miles Better campaign. So I think he was looked upon as some sort of PR guru type of thing. How much he played in that Glasgow Miles Better, I don't really know, but it was perceived to be, he's a good guy, knows what he's doing, and he's a Kelly. And his uncle was Robert Kelly, I think it was. So here's another Kelly. And obviously what you've got at Celtic Park is families inheriting shares. So maybe not necessarily the best people to run a football club, but if you're a Kelly or a White or a Grant, there's your shares, you're in charge. And the world was changing, and it changed across the city. So the week before the cup final, Michael Kelly, Brian Dempsey are co-opted onto the board, and Brian Dempsey's the guy you think, who's he? Because nobody's heard of Brian Dempsey. Brian Dempsey, self-made man, millionaire, got lots of land on his portfolio. He's the guy, because before the 89 cup final, the month before is the tragedy at Hillsborough. That then means that clubs, to the tail of the port, you need all-seated stadia. How are you going to have an all-seated stadia? We've got this huge expanse of rubbish, basically, apart from the South Stand. We've got a board doing what they're doing, and all of a sudden there's a time scale. We need a stadium that's as good as Ibrox. How are you going to afford that with these guys in charge, who are not independently wealthy men? Celtic men, of course, are Celtic men. Want to see the best for Celtic, but not equipped to take the club forward. So Brian Dempsey's co-opted on the board. You think that he's the guy that's going to find a new stadium, because that's his forte. And that's in the kind of April, I think, late April 1990. May 1990, we'll lose the cup final. Then you fast forward about 7 months or so, when the League Cup final against Rangers at Hampden. And we've just won the semi-final. That's us in the final. And I'm a season ticket holder now, so I'm entitled. And back then, with no social media, The only way you can find out what's happening with cup final tickets is to buy the Celtic View. So I buy the Celtic View, and say there's 6,000 season ticket holders, and say I'm number 3,500, say. In the Celtic View it says, qualifying for cup final, numbers 1 to 3,000. I'm thinking, can't be right. I'm 3,500, that can't be right. 3,000. Because supporters clubs have to get that. So half the season ticket holders weren't getting tickets to the cup final. Now, I know what happens at Hampden, 50,000 capacity. By the time the corporate guys get there, there's maybe 20,000 going to Celtic Park, and there's 6,000 season ticket holders, and you're saying half of those season ticket holders are not entitled to a ticket. Now, whether that's entitlement or not, I don't know, but thinking, what's this about? So I then write a letter, as you do back in the day. Letters were things you put through a postbox, kids. Write a letter to Kevin Kelly, and just a nice letter saying, look, how can this be? Because so season ticket holders is like bad guys, entitled, whatever. And he sends me a bizarre letter back, and I'm thinking, I'm not taking this. So I send another letter back to him, and I send him a cheque for £12 to get 2 tickets, or £6 for the terracing, right? £6. Goes to Kevin Kelly, and he sends me my money back. And just to say, look, if you get a bigger allocation, keep me in mind, Kevin, because I'm a season ticket holder. And, and I get ridiculous. If I worry about the Irish people that are coming, the people from London that are coming, I'm thinking, I live 3 miles for the bar, I've got a season ticket. Why am I not getting... So anyway, angry from Battlefield. So, I think Michael Kelly and Brian Dempsey, I'll write to them. So I write to them with a copy of the Kevin Kelly letter, and I say, look, you guys are, businessmen. This is what the chairman is saying. How can this be? Here's a cheque for £12. See if you get a couple of tickets, because you've put them my way. Thank you very much. So, Michael Kelly comes back fairly quickly, agrees. He says, yeah, we need to treat our customers better than this, but it's difficult, the allocation jam, I've not got my allocation yet, but hang on to your cheque, and if I get a couple of tickets, I'll send them your way. And you're thinking, there you are. That's what you want to hear. Somebody like that, understands customers. Brilliant. Michael Kelly, love him. And then the next day, I get a Brian Dempsey letter back, and the cheque falls out. I'm thinking, this guy Dempsey. So it's like a 2-page letter he's written. Right. He says, thanks for your letter. I agree with most of your points, some I don't, understandably so. He said, I've not got my allocation yet, but when I get it, I will definitely send you 2 tickets with my compliments. Right. Here's my phone number. Give me a call after the final, and let's have a chat about some of the points you're making. And I'm thinking, I'm in love with Brian Dempsey. That's it. I'm going to marry this guy. He's brilliant. This is great. Love it. And then a few weeks later, 2 tickets to Michael Kelly, 2 tickets to Brian Dempsey. The stand, best tickets out, £12 tickets I'm getting from Brian Dempsey. And because I was other irons in the fire, end up with another 6 tickets. So something like 10 tickets for the cup final. And then what I did was, because the guys around me didn't have tickets for the cup final, I phoned Celtic Park and I just said, look, I've got some extra tickets. And you know what it's like? People sit around you don't know their names. It's just, the guy with the yellow jacket on, and it's just that woman there. And bizarrely, they gave me their phone numbers. And I phoned them up and I said, look, I'm the guy at that time, the long red hair that sits behind you. I've got a couple of tickets for the final. And I ended up giving out tickets, kind of Robin Hood-like, giving out tickets for cup final. This is what I'm going to do. Right? So I've sorted the problem. I've got tickets, you've got tickets, everyone's happy. This is brilliant. And Brian Dempsey's God. So back in the day, on a Friday night, Scott Sport was on a Friday night. That's all you got. Scott Sport on a Friday night. Jerry McNee. And I've got the sound down and waiting for Scott Sport to come on. Once the news comes on, and then Scott Sport's going to come on. And my wife's there, sound down, and up comes Brian Dempsey's picture. I said, there he is. That's the guy. You're getting chucked. I'm marrying him because that's Brian Dempsey, 2 stand tickets. Look at this. Put the sound up. Sensationally sacked from the board. You're thinking, that's my man. Jerry McNee, sensationally sacked. The finals in 2 days' time. Fast forward, we lose, and after being a goal up, we lose 2-1 after extra time. I'm in the stand. All these other tickets are getting drenched, but I'm in the stand. I'm okay. We lose 2-1, and that was the tipping point. That was the bit that says, what are they doing? This is the guy who we think is going to, save the club in terms of hysteria, whatever. He's a businessman, knows what he's doing. And he's been, from a personal point of view, I've written to the guy, he gives me tickets, gives me his phone number. Kevin Kelly's telling me what about the Irish people that are coming, the London people. He obviously understands this and he's been sacked. I don't understand. And then I think a couple of weeks later, again, no social media. All you had was the phone in Radio Clyde. And a guy phones in and he says, I've had enough. I'm starting a campaign. And again, I thought, I'll contact. I phoned Clyde and I said, see that guy I don't, I'm his pal for school. Do you have his number? Aye, all right. There's his number. So much for data protection back at the end of the day, kids. And so phones the guy up, Wally Wilson's his name. I said, I heard you in Clyde, you were brilliant. I said, look, I'm happy to help out. I said, I'm a chartered accountant, so you want the kind of admin stuff or numbers and money sort of thing, just give me a bell, basically. So I arranged to meet Wally, pub up to town. He's going to print flyers. This is his idea. We're going to print flyers. And I brought along a couple of my mates as well. And a few of us went up to Celtic Park, freezing cold, December day, January day, and how that flies. It just basically said, and Wally's name for it was Save Our Celts, basically. And I know that since then people have said, well, that's a kind of rather kind of plaintive kind of, but they did need saving. They did need saving at that time. Otherwise, they were going to go bust. But things are okay on the park. You don't really see that. It's like, well, if we win the league next year, everything's okay again. It was never okay because we had a stadium to build. They didn't have the money for other things. We're not buying the players. At this point, they've done 2-3 in a row. Where's this going to stop? How's it, so we go and hand it flat. And for every one person that said, good on you, son, the other one would give you dogs abuse. Get down, get away, support the team sort of thing. So we put a P.O. box number on it as well. And then we met with the fanzine guys, Jed Dunbar, Brendan Sweeney, Ben O'Hara, Average Joe Miller, the guys. And what we're going to do, how do we move this forward? Form a committee. So Wally's the kind of head guy. I'm on the committee, another 3 people on it. The idea was let's have a public meeting and let's try and get something moving. Let's try and form some sort of independent Celtic supporters club, because there was the association and the affiliation. And to ordinary punters, it was just like, well, they're there to get tickets for the games. They're not that bothered. Once they get tickets, they seemed as if they were okay. I'm all right, Jack. And we felt as if, well, this isn't about tickets. This is about what's happening in the future. So we then say, right, on you go, Jim, you go and organise it then. Fine, because you volunteered to do this. Right, fine. So I've got Brian Dempsey's number. So, hi, Brian. Sorry, Jim or Save yourself. So Brian Dempsey invites him in his office, and they bring the guys. And we'll go see Brian. And lovely, lovely man. And he was saying, I can't tell you everything that happened, but this happened and that happened. That shouldn't have happened. And I'm going to the board meeting every week and I'm getting dogs abuse and life's too short for this. And I'd Rob Royston on a plate and then he starts explaining. And went to the next room and he's got a sort of kind of 8x4 model of this Rob Royston and railway station behind it. And he's talking about access to the stadium and railways and the furthest viewpoint you would have would only be like 30 metres and stuff like that. And how quickly you can empty the stadium from a safety point of view. And then he said about, I've said this before to you, that he said the most bizarre thing, he said, because of the position of the stadium, he said, the sun will never be in the goalkeeper's eyes. And it sounded like kind of Chinese proverb. I was thinking, this is good. The sun, Pat Bono, but that's good. Doesn't need a cap. No, never be in the goalkeeper's eyes. So the thing is, this detail, this stuff. So we're all kind of, this is great. This is brilliant. So he agrees he'll be happy to come along to this meeting that we're going to have. So I booked Shelton Halls, which is the biggest kind of hall near Celtic Park. And it's in my name. Right. So the police phoned me up and they're saying, Jim, you booked this thing. What about stewards? I'm thinking, what about stewards? He said, well, how many are you expecting? 300-400. Well, you'll need stewards, you'll need this, you'll need that. And it dawns on you, this isn't my name. What happens if it goes Percy? I'm in trouble here. So we get Brian Dempsey going to come. He says he would talk to a couple of guys on the board who were on his side. So he managed to get Tom Grant, Jimmy Farrell. Because up to that point, any correspondence we had, the board said, you'll be an embarrassment, beat it, you're no Celtic supporters, get lost. Whereas Brian was going to bring along a couple of guys. Wally Wilson was going to speak at it, which was brilliant. Because, Wally Wilson's a bloody working guy. He's going to stand up in front of 300-400 people. Brilliant. Manchester Jim Craig, Lisbon Lions going to come along as well. Jed Dunbar volunteered, not the View. So we've got a kind of panel of people that are going to talk to maybe 300-400 people about some of the issues that we have. Need somebody to chair it. And we got a journalist, like a famous journalist, who was going to do it, who then, quite close to it, kind of backed out because I think he felt as if I can't be seen to be aligned with, the Celtic supporters faction. So, and coincidentally, the day before, there was a letter in the Herald, letters paid by Joe Beltrami, a very famous Glasgow lawyer, and it was a massive letter against the Celtic board. I've been going to watch them for 40 years, and and I'm thinking, Joe Beltrami, really famous guy, obviously hates the board. I'll phone him, because that's what you do. I'll phone Joe Beltrami. Because when you look back on it, it's quite bizarre. Why are we phone Joe? I don't know, I'll phone Joe Beltrami. So you get a phone book, kids. There's just something called a phone book. Where you look up Beltrami and Company, West Nile Street. So I phone Joe Beltrami, and you get through to reception. Who's calling? Jim Orr. What's the company? And it's that kind of like ridiculous pause, and you say, "Save Our Celts." And now you can, when you see a word and you're thinking, this doesn't make sense. And then she says, what? Who? What? I said, it's a supporters campaign type thing. Hold on, I'll see if he's in. Straight away comes through, Mr. O, a big booming voice. We need this board out. Come and see me tomorrow. Thinking, I'm pushing an open door here. Go to see Joe Beltrami next day. 2 hours in his office. Tell him the history of him going to watch Celtic and what we need to do. What we need to do. And that's the one. We used to say, would you mind chairing this meeting? Of course, I'll chair the meeting. And then fast forward, it's kind of February 91, and we have this meeting at Shelton Halls. Media there, TV, radio, newspapers, they're all there because they want to see Brian Dempsey. Obviously want to see Brian Dempsey. And he's brilliant. He spoke for half an hour, no script, just brilliant. Palm of his hand, audience, great. Next day, it's in all the newspapers. It's on. It's the first item in Scott Sport. It's the first item in Scotland Today. It's on the beat. It's everywhere. And we went from like, here's an idea, to all of a sudden, it's getting noticed. And then I was saying to Dempsey, things like, is this the first stage in a takeover? No, just having a chat. That thing. We've heard that Ken Dalglish has been approached. No, what? So we do that, gets a bit of traction, try to do other things over the next few months or so, and Terry Cassidy joins the board, and he's the guy, he's the buffer, so he's going to try and keep people at bay. We try and do some other things. What you're never going to do is call for a boycott. You can't ask Celtic fans not to go and watch Celtic, but you know that's the answer. You know that if you come along and give them money, they're going to take it. Why wouldn't they take it? If you stop giving them money, then something might happen. But you're never going to say that. You're never going to say boycott games. Fast forward about 8 months, we decide another meeting, and Terry Cassidy agrees to come along, which is a real coup, because up to that point he was like, don't want to involve with you guys. We have a different panel this time. We make it a Q&A, and it's mostly Terry Cassidy. Wally Wilson speaks again, which is brilliant. A guy called Professor Tom Carberry, who again had written a thing in the Herald Letters page about how ill thought out the board's stadium plans were. And he was happy to come along as well. We get Brendan O'Hara, who was part of NTV's on MSP, abbreviations. Peter Rafferty for the affiliation came along. Mainly a Q&A, but the big takeaway was this was 1991, and we had to have an all-season stadium by 94. And Terry Cassidy said out loud, we'll have the best stadium in Europe within 3 years. And that was the headlines in all the paper, the Save Our Celts rally or meeting. Terry Cassidy said it to us, and obviously he was away within about a year or so. So we did that. We had about 300 or 400 people who'd replied to us, which was never a mandate, basically, compared to maybe 50, 60,000 Celtic fans. A lot of people didn't like it. Basically, the Kellys and the Whites, they're good Celtic men, leave them be. Totally getting that. But then it's 4 in a row. And then when's this going to stop? Who's going to do anything about this? And then what the board then started is to form PAC. They brought a guy called David Smith onto the board, finance guy, drew up pacts whereby they couldn't vote in a certain way to the detriment of other pact members. It could be to the detriment of Celtic, but not to the detriment of the pact members. And then people like David Lowe for years had been gathering up shares because he saw that rightly as the way to overthrow the board. And then they brought these pacts in to try and stop. Brian Dempsey was trying to do things alongside Dave Lowe. Other people were trying to do things as well. There was loads of other individuals, wealthy individuals with some influence, doing things behind the scenes. Fergus McCann was doing something behind the scenes. The Fergus McCann had been at the board on at least one occasion and offered them interest-free loans and whatever, but they chased him as well. So we get to something like April 92. So we've got this campaign going for the best part of it, a year and a half or so, and it's getting nowhere. And any time there's a bit of success on the field, it dies a bit because you're talking about it. We've just, a new man, Liam Brady, this will be great. And it's not great. And there was the famous St. Patrick's Day Massacre that was called, where we beat Rangers twice in a week. What's the issue? Just beating them twice in a week. Man, no problems here. But he knew it was going to get worse. And then there was a meeting that Willie and I attended. Brian Dempsey's there, Tom Grant was there, the fanzine guys, Matt McGlone was there, and to cut a long story dead short, we thought we've taken this Save Our Celts as far as we can. Brendan Sweeney knew Willie Wilson. Willie put Brendan in touch with Matt McGlone, and they formed something called Celts for Change, which was a far more aggressive, in-your-face campaign, and that had more joy. But even that had to wait another couple of years until things get so bad that with that famous 8 minutes from going out of existence and Fergus McCann riding to the rescue, because things got worse. Now, you could go back to 1986 and Davy Haynes and say, this is going to get worse, guys, worse and worse and worse. Mo Johnston, worse and worse and worse. Where's your tipping point? And the tipping point was that the old board were never going to leave. We're never going to leave. We'd far rather Celtic didn't exist than then giving up the power. And that's when Fergus McCann came in. And no matter what you say about Fergus McCann, he put his money on the table. And what others maybe didn't, I don't know the facts of the matter, but he came in and did that. And the famous story about we're 8 minutes away from going bust. And people blame the bank. Well, why wouldn't the bank give us more money? Because you're losing money year after year after year. And the board are not wealthy individuals. So if I'm the bank, why am I giving you money? Well, you're giving it to Rangers. Well, they're running a business that looks like this. They've got Murray there. They've got this. Well, that's why we're giving them the money, because we've got some confidence we'll get it back. Although that all went a bit pear-shaped a few years later. But we're confident we'll get it back. You guys, you don't know what you're doing. So why would we give you, and you've got a pact to make it more difficult for people to come in. This guy, Fergus McCann, won't give you money and you're chasing them. So, no, you get no money. And it went to the wire. And it was that close. And you've got the famous kind of Sunday Mail picture of the hearse outside Celtic Park, Celtic RIP. And that's what was going to happen. And that's what would have happened. And the old board would have let that happen. And that was the point. And there was no point. And what happened then was that there was I don't know if it's what's called an organised boycott by Celts for Change. I'm not very sure about the wording in that. Matt McGlone's a brilliant guy. Matt McGlone, loads of grief, but, he was the kind of driving force behind that Celts for Change movement. And then, I forget the mechanics of the thing, but we're playing Kilmarnock in a midweek game, and I think it was something along the lines of, if there was less than 10,000 there, the bank were going to take action. I think Matt and the guys would be full counting, because at the time, the board would always underestimate the crowd, or under-declare the crowd, because, back then, it was all cash, so it wasn't season tickets, so who knew who came into the game? So you might have a crowd of 40,000. Would you tell the taxman you're getting 40,000? Tell him it's 30,000, so you're not paying tax. So I think all clubs did something to that degree back in the time. It's not 40, it's 30. But here was a game whereby it was in the board's interest to say it's a higher number in case the bank stepped in. And Matt and the guys had counters, official counters at the turnstiles, kept people going in, and it was 9,000 something. It was less than 10. And then 2 days later, the bank got in touch to say, we're going to wind you up. That's you finished. And that's when Fergus came in. And that's the story.